Leyline Mage, the next stop on my Cataclysm farewell tour. Leyline Mage, one of the newer decks that came with this expansion simply because it came into being with the release of the class set, which was about halfway through the expansion, so we have not been able to enjoy this deck as much as some of the older decks for the Cataclysm expansion. Also, the power level of the deck was never really there, I think, for a lot of people. Even after cards were buffed, the class or the deck just was not strong enough to be able to entice a large portion of the community to be able to play the Leyline Mage. It was a little bit sad simply because I do think the archetype is enjoyable. You can have fun with it. When the power level's not there, a lot of times the fun just isn't there in Hearthstone if you end up losing too many games. This is the current list that I've been playing, and when you take a look at it, you're going to notice that it looks an awful lot like an aggro mage list, simply because it's been determined that the best way to take this deck is to make it a little bit more on the aggressive side, although maybe some of these spells are going to be used more for like defensive options as we try to ramp up into the late game. We are, however, running most of the Leyline cards. You're going to notice that we do have all of the minions for the Leylines that are going to be included in this deck. And then we are also running Leylines themselves, Bursting Leylines, as well as the Leyline Nexus, and Crystallized Leyline, also actually in the deck as well, along with the Arcanomicon here. So full Leyline package actually included in this particular deck. In the mulligan, we're going to want any of the minions that are going to be buffing our Leylines. So that's going to be the Mystic Rune Saber, the Ley Walker, as well as the Surge Needle. And we're also going to look to keep our one-drop minions with these Winter Spring Whelps here, just to be able to get something on the board early. Let's head to the trenches, see if we can win some games. Right off the bat, we land on a Hunter. We're going to keep the two Leyline buffing minions, and we're going to toss the Thalanos. Hunter matchup, I guess it's largely going to depend on whether or not it is face Hunter or whether we're actually just going to be facing Companion Hunter. I think the only really bad matchups for Leyline Mage are just going to be Paladin and Warrior, as those decks just kind of tend to run this deck over. Premium top deck for us. We're going to go ahead and get this down. And likely our early game plan is we're just going to curve out with the Leyline minions, and then we'll find something else to do from that point forward. And we see that we're actually going to be against Companion Hunter. We're just going to keep to our general game plan. I'm going to go ahead and take the bump here. Our opponent may actually have a way to just be able to remove this. So on our next turn, we won't be able to take a trade like this. We might still need to do this. Also would give us the option to hero power, but I think our turn 4 is probably locked in just with a Surge Needle play. And then we would probably like to just go ahead and draw some cards. Wound Prey comes down, so our 4-2 is going to die. This is basically exactly what we expected, and that's why we bumped into the minion like this. And hopefully we will be able to finish trading for that minion. Our opponent, however, does have double Wound Prey. That's going to clear the board. We're going to be dropping down our anti-aggro Surge Needle right about now. One of the favorite memories of this expansion for me is when this card was buffed. It was originally printed as a 3/3 minion. It was buffed, and there was a video released onto YouTube by the developers that said they were giving this minion 2 extra health because it would help Leyline Mage against aggro decks. I've never really been able to get over that. I think we actually have a pretty straightforward turn here. I mean, 2 random 7-cost minions for only 4 mana feels pretty good. I can Sleet Storm here. Hopefully the one hits this, push face, and summon a couple of big minions. So it's going to allow us to be able to get to our big minions before our opponent is able to get to their big minions. And we actually hit an Underking. I don't think there's really anything that we can necessarily do with the Chrono Lord here. We did unfortunately discard the Smoldering Grove. Our hand is small, but we do have extra resources thanks to the Runed Orbs. I think if we had used that turn just to draw cards, it would have been a little bit too slow for this matchup. We know that our opponent is going to be ramping very quickly into very big beasts, And with the coin on turn 6, they could potentially coin out like a roam free, and that could just spell bad news for us. We see the Talia come down now. That's very good for them. The one plus that we have here is that our opponent actually is just on the 4-cost minions. If we did this, that's 6, that would be 8. Just checking to see if we could play the Spellweaver's Brilliance here. We cannot this particular turn. All of our damage is going to be going face anyway, though. You really just need to kill our opponent as quickly as possible. And because of that, I'm just going to take the Fireball. If I Fireball, unfortunately we still cannot play the Spellweaver's Brilliance. But Fireball sets up lethal next turn with Arcane Flow and Ruined Orb. So I think the best thing that we can do here is just shove damage face and force our opponent to have something like a Critter Caretaker, just to be able to gain a little bit of health. If they don't, we have 4 here, 2 here, and it's just going to be lethal next turn. The Broll coming down, and I assume that this means that they're actually just dead. We're going to be able to kill them with the spell damage from hand. We'll see if they have a coin Critter Caretaker. And they actually do have Critter Caretaker, but our 3 attack minion is still on the board, so that's going to be a way for us to be able to deal the extra damage that we need to deal to be able to finish off our opponent here. Then I'm going to go ahead and very quickly make my choice. I don't want to BM my opponent by allowing that Discover to just linger on the screen. Unfortunately, in that situation, if you kill your opponent with a spell that discovers, you can actually leave that up, that Discover, without picking an option, and your entire turn will take up until you rope out, and then when your turn ends, the death animation happens for your opponent here, so don't really want to BM our opponents like that. I don't condone BM in any way whatsoever. We run directly back into another Hunter. I'm going to keep the Whelp and the Rune Saber. I'm going to toss these other guys, and we'll see if we can find, looking for the Leyline minions. I think the last game was a good example of a game where if you hit those Leyline minions and just kind of curve out, this deck feels reasonably powerful, fairly strong. I just like the damage here. The inconsistency of this deck is if you don't find those Leyline minions a little bit earlier in the game, things can start to... I'm not sure what the right word is. You just don't have powerful turns, and then you just don't win the game because the result of making weaker turns. Being able to buff your ley lines and starting to play ley lines around, you know, turn 5, turn 6 is what makes the deck fairly competitive, or as competitive as it can be. We see the Sylvanas come down. We don't mind that, losing that board. You know, we weren't necessarily going to be winning the game with that particular board anyway. And we like to see the Sylvanas come down nice and early. That means they will not have access to it later in the game. Our opponent, however, able to develop a decent board for themselves. And this is just a pretty straightforward, we play our anti-aggro minions. So this game, again, I've been able to curve out perfectly with a Rune Saber, Ley Walker into Surge Needle. This is not going to happen in every single game. I don't want you to get the wrong idea here. If it did, this deck would be significantly better than it actually is. I think realistically, we're probably looking at like a 50 to 52% win rate deck. You can certainly have a lot of fun with it, but you're not necessarily going to be blowing out your opponents. Now, the one problem that I see here is that we're almost dead. Our opponent has 18 damage, we have 19 health. I think the play is still going to be summon 2 random 7-cost minions, and then we will be able to, like, bump here, and we can drop down a Sleet Storm or even an Arcane Shot. I think we Sleet Storm first. If the 1 damage hits one of these guys, we can then coin out the Arcane Shot. So we get our 7 drops first to see what happens. We get some nice taunt. And I'm going to have to go ahead and bump like this and hopefully the 1 damage hits one of these guys. It does not. And so at that point, I think we actually save the coin. Could Sleet Storm like this guy and hope for the best, but it's unlikely. It would be 1 out of 3, the 2, and then the 1 would be able to hit this to remove it. See, Varanoth Hunter is what we're actually going to be up against here. So now we have the opportunity to maybe do some things. It's going to be a lot of damage with this bursting Leyline. Can we afford to Arcanomicon? It's really slow. Or do we just need to do this? Maybe we draw first and then do this. Probably need to clear up this board a little bit. I think I am just going to go ahead and draw cards here. And now we could actually just go Khadgar, Crystallize Leyline, and even take a trade here. I think we just start to kind of overwhelm the board if we make a play like this. So we'll see what minions we get here with our 7 drops. Nothing super spectacular. And I'm going to have to go fast because I am now roping. I will take the Arcane Flow. I'll do this. Coin. This. Damage face. Damage face. It will end the turn. So unfortunately the 1 damage didn't hit this 4-1. I may have been able to sequence that turn just a little bit better. I started to rope and I kind of just locked in on a line of play. Wanted to make sure that I got all of my actions in, which I did. And I think we've just presented a board that our opponent may lose to. Unlikely that they can kill us. We do still have the taunts. We have 19 health. We have some burst in hand. And we just have a lot of stuff on the board that our opponent's going to need to address. Not totally sure what they're running with this Varanoth Hunter. But I do not believe this in any way is going to allow our opponent to be able to beat us here. And especially not with the 2 burstings. So we will use our bursting ley lines simply because we are Leyline Mage. And then we'll figure out the math on whatever's left to be able to finish off our opponent. We can just hit here. And we're going to shove these guys face. And you can see that we're actually able to take down the Hunter here. Once again, we were able to curve out really well just with the Leyline buffing minions, the 2, the 3 into the 4. And then from there, the Leylines really just are extremely powerful, even with just, 1 of each of the different buffs, as you can see the deck tracker is pointing out here. We had the Arcanomicon in hand. I don't think we ever had a good opportunity to play it this game. We just had better plays, but we didn't even need the buffs off of that. So again, I would say this game, probably what you would consider would be a little bit more of a high roll game, simply because we did hit all 3 of the minions. We were able to play them absolutely on curve. So the deck, once again, looks probably a little bit better than it actually is on average when you do tend to curve out like that. Coming back in against a Priest, one of my least favorite classes to play against here in Hearthstone. They did keep the far left. That most likely means that they're going to be Quest Mage, so that should give us plenty of time to be able to develop our Leyline stuff. And once again, we see that I'm a filthy high roller here, so at this point, I'm going to point out, I'm just going to take the Spark of Life. The reason I'm taking it is because I might be able to discover either more damage or an additional Leyline spell. But at this point, I'm going to point out, for anyone who may not know, that when I queue up games for a deck, unless I otherwise say so, I queue up consecutive ladder games, and so that means that I just queue up consecutive games. There's no games in between. I'm not cherry-picking games or anything like that. I don't want to give a false impression of how powerful a deck is or how good I am as a player, and you can track that just by checking my rank at the end of each game and the beginning of the next game. The reason I like to point that out here is because for the 3rd game in a row, I'm curving out 2, 3, 4. which is going to be pretty powerful for this particular deck. But it is not an average experience. There are going to be games where you don't hit any of your Leyline minions, and you're going to feel like your deck is a wet noodle that really just doesn't even have a win condition. I think one thing that we've all learned, though, when you're playing Hearthstone, some games are easier than others. And so when you are high rolling or things are kind of going your way a little bit, you just kind of accept it and keep on rolling. We're going to get down our next buff, and we'll be able to start drawing cards. A lot of card drawing hands. We'll be able to fill our hand up really nicely. Not making a lot of progress on our opponent's health total, though. And I'm still thinking, like, Priest just has access to so many different types of removal. But this can help us actually set up some burst later in the game. I'm going to draw more cards here. We can just go ahead and check our 1-cost spell at this point. Only one minion in hand. Not super excited about this. None of these are really all that great. I guess I'll take this for maybe a little bit later in the game. We do 6 damage with this. I could actually get the 6/6 down this turn. It's probably wise to get the 6/6 down, I think. For a little bit of a small sacrifice. I do this, and I still have room to be able to draw here. So I am going to hit like this. I'll go ahead and get this guy down. Do that. Do this. We'll get down to 6/6. Then I'll push face here. And I'm just going to hold the Khadgar for the crystallized Leyline. Assuming we draw into these, we'll be able to present a nice big board for our opponent. We're also going to want to track the amount of damage we have in hand. We have 5 from these spells. And we may be able to discover additional damage just from the Spark of Life. 6/6 dies, kind of expected that. I did not want to get both 6/6s in play simply because we know that our opponent has lots of removal. They have Shadow Word Ruin that will kill any minion with 5 attack or more. And we can see that our opponent is healing, staying healthy, and progressing their quest. These are all things that are good for them, bad for us. We're also not drawing our bursting or crystallized ley lines, but we're drawing so many of the buffs. Arcanomicon would be a nice draw as well. So I'm going to start and see if I can just hit some card draw. I actually can't. I have no fire spells in the deck, so this isn't great. I think I just take the Arcane Flow for the damage that it's going to allow us at some point this game. Get down the Surge Needle. And I'm just going to bump into the minion like this. Not really expecting this board to survive. Our opponent is going to have a lot of board clears. We know that they run copies of Moonwell. We still haven't seen any copies of Medivh's Triumph. They're going to have ways to be able to remove our entire board. Probably wise at this point just to trade for our opponent's minions. And at some point, hopefully we can chunk down their health to be able to set up a big kill turn with some of the direct damage spells that we have in our hand. Smoldering Grove, the top deck, we probably need to hold on to this to get additional card draw. We just need to get like some bursting ley lines. Imagine how we could punish boards like this with bursting ley lines. But I think drawing one probably isn't enough. I'm going to start with the Runed Orb. See what we can get in terms of additional resources. You've discovered this turn, summon a random 4. Probably would just rather have the Frostbolt for additional damage. And I'm just going to go ahead and do this. I can get down our next 6/6. I think I will just Frostbolt to remove the 4/3 rather than holding on to that damage. And everything else is going to go face. At any time we feel like we need to, we'll be able to combine our Shatter card, which is going to be nice. We can just dump this out of our hand. Ideally, we would like to play Archmage Calic. And then at that point, if we had 2 Arcane Flows in hand, that would potentially just give us a lot of burst from hand. Next turn, depending on the top deck, I may actually just have to go ahead and play the Smoldering Grove. We need to draw into some stuff to be able to finish off our opponent. We'll see what they do here. The fact that they have not been able to play a Cleansing Cleric is causing them to take quite a bit of damage this game. And I actually draw the Calic. How much damage do we have? So break the Divine Shield, we have 5. We would have 13. That's not going to be enough. So I'm going to go ahead and draw 2 here. And I think I just summoned the big minions. We force our opponent to answer 3 8-cost minions. I can save the Calic for another turn. And then in the future I can play Calic, like next turn, the following turn I would have Thalnos and this for even more burst. Seems like it would be pretty good, but I'm going to force our opponent to have something pretty good here to be able to clear this board. I would assume that they're going to have a way to be able to remove these. The 4/12 might actually be a little bit sticky here. Shadow Word Ruin removes the bigger minions, and then we see some taunts come down. It's actually a lot of taunt. Can we burn through it? 6. I feel like I'm going to miss a lethal here. Combine these, play the Thalnos. Reborn. So once I kill these, they no longer have taunt.
We must band together, united for Dalaran.
So we're going to do this. We'll hit here. We will hit here. And we're actually going to be able to shove the damage face to be able to kill our priest opponent. So I was doing some mental gymnastics. This is not normally a taunt minion. It was made a taunt by the Grave Dawn Bulb. But in my mind I was seeing a nightmare scenario where, because the minion was reborn, it would be reborn with taunt, but that's actually just not the case here, so wanted to make sure that I wasn't going to make some goofball mistake and cost myself a win that we actually just kind of had in the bag in this particular game. Back in, we hit a Druid, and I'm going to toss all this away. Mulligan, still looking for Rune Saber, Ley Walker, Surge Needle. I actually hit 2 of those, so I'm a filthy high roller for this particular set of games. This is the 4th game in a row that I've had these. If I can just top deck a Mystic Rune Saber, that'd actually be 4 games in a row that I've been able to curve out. And, yeah. Now, I will say also, if you watch the channel on a regular basis, you realize I deserve to have this kind of a draw. There's no guarantee that this draw is going to allow me to be able to win this game. I may still lose. But based on things that have been happening to me in Hearthstone over the years, I deserve to have some lucky streaks. But I want to make sure that I'm being upfront and honest with you. This is not going to be your typical experience when you're playing this deck. You're not going to curve out every single game with these Leyline buffing minions. I, however, am curving out rather nicely the last couple of games. Totally deserved. And no complaints from me. Next turn. May have actually just lost the game right here. We're going to find out how good of a Hearthstone player our opponent is with this particular thing. I feel like when I play this, the stuff is really bad, but it can just be really, really powerful. I think I might actually need to draw cards rather than play the Surge Needle.
Whatever shall I do?
Probably definitely should trade here. Let's see what our Leyline is first. It's Leyline Nexus. If I play this, it's going to draw 2 cards, so I think I'm more comfortable discarding the Smoldering Grove in this situation. So we discard both Smoldering Groves. I think we're probably okay. Still 2 Leyline Nexus in the deck. We have 1 created Leyline Nexus. But our hand is like not doing anything unless we can get some additional spell damage to be able to get down 2 6/6s.
I remember this place well.
But if we were somehow able to get down 2 6/6s, we would just be in a tremendous, tremendous spot. We'll be able to draw and get some discounted cards here that should be good for us, I hope. Lightning Bolt trade here. That's going to be okay. Actually, they're going to trade here. They do take 3 damage off of that. I don't mind. Pick up an Arcane Flow, but it's awkward because the 2 10-cost spells are actually in between it. So we're going to draw first. And we're just going to create a huge board. I'm going to do this first and just remove the 2/2. I'll take the Arcane Barrage. That can help us activate these. But then I'm just going to get down a really huge board. So once again, we see that I am a filthy, filthy high roller. And we'll see if our opponent is actually able to deal with this board. 7 mana. I don't think we've totally won just yet, but we are pretty close just because of how powerful this particular play was. Really strong defensive play from our opponent. I do think they're only running 1 copy of Twilight Time Reaver, and they still have the 2 1-mana guys over here. Not really sure what those are. But I should be able to get down the 6/6s. So this is 3 mana, 7 damage. This goes to 3. If I just do this, it clears the board, and I get down the 6/6s, and I can push everything. I have to shoot here in order to clear the board. It just seems worth it to do this. If they're only running 1 copy of the Twilight Time Reaver, they may not be able to respond as well to these guys, and I do still have a little burst in hand. I think what I'm concerned about is that one of these is a Typhoon, in which case my entire board gets shuffled away. If we're ever able to trade these away, our board actually gets better, just because of the Death Rattle minions. See a Renewing Flames come down, so our opponent is able to heal quite a bit here. And they do still have 1 additional card that can cause us a problem from the Bashana. 2 to everything, and not really all that good. Or is it? Maybe it actually just is good. Go to everything, hit here. Not exactly the 4 drops I was hoping for. Ping off this guy. This damage goes face for sure. And these are going face. I'm considering whether or not I just want to bump this to soften this guy up. But I guess it's probably better to just go face. We'll take all the face damage we can get. We do have a lethal setup on board. I'm assuming our opponent can remove some of our stuff. This play helps them quite a bit. Be able to stall. We're going to take 3 off of that. Splintered Reality. Certainly not a bad play. So what does that leave us with? We can do this. Also have to make sure I'm not in a position where I just die. I have 8 from hand. They have 20. They probably can't... They can deal 9 if they have Shaladrasil, which might actually be a danger for us here. So I'm going to do this. I'm going to hold on to the Rune Saber simply because if this dies, I do want it to be able to summon 2 minions. I think I actually just have to do the responsible thing and take a trade here. I would like to push face, but if they have Shaladrasil, we would actually just die. I would really like to draw a Leyline Nexus and maybe get into like some of our other Leylines. Burstings, Crystallized would be good, Arcanomicon would be good. Unfortunately, we see the Wicker Fang come down. I think that means they're probably going to have lethal set up. Possibly for next turn. We are drawing cards though. We don't want to draw 1-drops. Not ideal. So I need to make sure I don't die. Again, worried about Shaladrasil here. Should have played the Winter Spring Whelp before this, simply because I would have been able to get additional... Would have been able to get additional spell damage. Ended up not mattering. So I can do this. We'll do this and hopefully kill one of these guys. I do. So now Shaladrasil... It's still close to being lethal. I'll give 2/2 to this guy. I'm just going to take some trades here. I have 10 from hand, and if I ever draw a Bursting Leyline, 12 cards in the deck, I can probably just kill my opponent. I'm assuming they're going to have to trade here. With the hero power, that would be 11. We see a Vanessa come down. That's potentially going to be bad. They're going to run out of board space, which means they would have to trade legs to be able to create additional board space. Don't necessarily mind that either. This game is going to come down to the wire. They need to trade though. He's 7. Is it actually? It's just exact lethal. Our opponent's at 18 and we have 18. We have 10, we have 11. We have exactly 18. It looks like we are again going to be getting out of this game with a win. And for the first time, I think, in quite a while, that's going to be a video, 4 consecutive games, and I won every game. Man, it feels really good. Hearthstone is so much more fun when you're winning. I do want to say, once again, I was definitely high rolling. Every single game for 4 games in a row, I had Rune Saber into Leywalker into the Surge Needle. That's not going to happen every single game. When it does happen, you feel like you're playing a really, really good deck. The inconsistency comes in when you're not buffing your ley lines. Largely, it felt like this particular game, though, we didn't even necessarily win because of we had the ley line buffs. So I was lucky being able to curve out with these different ley line buffing cards. I only got to play 1. Well, no, that's not true, because I was able to draw cards with the Leyline Nexus, so the buff certainly helped in that regard. But no bursting ley lines, and I only played one crystallized ley line, and those huge minions, even though I had a really strong turn with the Khadgar, they were actually just reduced down to only one attack and didn't have that much of a bearing on the game. But I will say Leyline Mage, definitely enjoyable, and I think it certainly wins enough at this point that you can have fun with it. For me, it's kind of like 50-50. If I can win at least half the games that I play, usually I can end up enjoying a deck. Keep in mind too, I'm on my Cataclysm Farewell Tour. These decks likely will not be strong enough to see play when Escape from Violet Hold expansion launches, so if there's a deck that you're enjoying that you really, really like, you might want to queue it up, get in some games in Standard, because before long it will basically be gone from Standard forever. Thank you for watching. I'll see you next time.